Listen, Mosaic, it's Moses. What did you call me? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Gaining the Edge. My name is Steve.
Gloria.
And we thank you for joining us today as we will be discussing well-versed, breaking down the word, and seeing how we can apply this to our daily lives as individuals. So we're just going to get right into it. The last episode of well-versed was the Pyramid Showdown, where we see Moses confronting Pharaoh for the very first time. And the overarching theme for this episode is that, we just have to, whatever happens, even if things get worse, continue to trust in God.
Yeah.
And this episode, I think, does a great job of illustrating that instance.
Yeah.
As believers, we deal with that a lot, where God tells us to do one thing and things seem to get worse before they get better. So
yeah. And then that's when, of course, your friends, things will get better. Things always get worse before they get better. Or what's the other one?
The light at the end of the tunnel. The night is darkest just before the dawn. All that stuff.
I personally, I've never heard that one, but it sounds good. It makes sense. But that's essentially what was happening in this case, because we know when the story started off with Moses going to speak to Pharaoh, we know that after they left, things got a whole lot worse for the people of Israel. And we depicted that in the episode where, of course, we added some humor to it, but the Pharaoh's officer comes and says, hey, you got to get your own straw. And then, it cuts away to that scene where it's like, that far, we got to get our own straw from over there. But it goes to show that sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. And to us, sometimes we start to freak out because we think, well, I've been fasting more, I've been praying more, I've been reading my word more. Why is it that things are getting worse? Why isn't God hearing me? What's happening? And it's normal. We all go through that sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think just imagining again, like where Moses was in that point. He was waiting right outside the door when the Israelites, the taskmasters or the officers of the people of Israel went and spoke to Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh gave them that news, like, hey, like we're gonna make you guys work even harder and not reduce quota, which sounds very much like corporate America. So it's funny where that came from. We see it in the Bible there. But yeah, like Pharaoh made their lives much worse and told them that, they still were responsible for the same work. So they go outside, and then there's Moses and Aaron waiting to hear probably good news.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, this is all your fault.
Yeah.
Like you come in here and made this like 10 times worse for us. I thought you were supposed to be saving us. So just from Moses' perspective, like you were saying, like he's doing what God has asked him to do. And the situation is getting worse, it seems,
right,
and not getting better. So yeah, definitely just demoralizing for Moses in that point, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that Moses maybe failed to see at that point, and to your point, he didn't really know God. Moses didn't know God at this stage. He knew, the burning bush encounter. And I think in the next chapter after that was the whole leprosy thing. So God was showing bits and pieces of himself to Moses, but Moses was still learning about God and getting to know him for himself. So I can see him, like, why he would go back and complain, like, listen, you said I was going to do XYZ. I went and did that, and things got worse for them. What's the deal? What's going on here? So I can definitely understand, and I can relate to Moses in that regard, because I'm sure there's been instances for all of us where you think you're going one way, or you think God has instructed you, hey, do XYZ, and you feel like you are in the perfect will of God. So things must go right because I am walking according to his word. I heard him. I heard it in my dream. I saw it in a vision. This is what he's saying. I'm so convinced and convicted. And then you go there and it just flops. You're like, wait, but I thought God spoke.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean God didn't speak. It just means that this is the plan that he had. And sometimes, like what the whole theme is, things have to get worse sometimes before they get better. So for me personally, in my career, there's been instances where I've looked for different opportunities at work, and maybe I didn't find it, so I wanted to spread my wings externally and find something else. But I remember in one instance where things were getting bad at work, and I was like, you know what, I'm tired of this place. I want to leave. God, you're the one who brought me here, but I'm kind of tired. They're not treating me right. I want to go. So of course I start applying. I'm applying here, I'm applying there. I'm getting interviews, all right. I'm going through all these interviews, and there are some where it's like, man, I know I definitely got this job. That interview was good.
I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, you were there for it.
I was
Like,
there.
I was like, man, this interview was awesome. Like, yeah, I definitely got the job. I'm gonna put my resignation in. I'm gonna go to my manager. Listen, I'm leaving this place. The Monday came, and the lady was like, I'm sorry, we went with other people. I said, what? I said, no way. Like, I remember I called her back. She actually left me a voice, and I called her back. I was like, wait,
You sure?
are you sure? I was so confident that I nailed that interview. And of course, I went back. I was like, God, what happened? Like, I thought this was the right move. Like, this was it. This is a perfect place for me. They had all the things I prayed for. And God is like,
you got other plans.
I got other plans for you. Yeah.
But yeah, no, God is I'll say funny like that. Of course, like when we're dealing with that, it's not always funny. But God, he be doing that sometimes where, he says in his word, like his ways are not our ways.
Yeah.
His thoughts are not our thoughts. So it essentially says like, God thinks and looks at things so very differently than we do as individuals, where he sees, the big picture, where we only see like a very small portion.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's definitely it's not always ideal for us. It might not seem always ideal, but we just have to continue to trust that God has a plan for us.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add to that is like, it's not about us. And I think as believers, sometimes we get very selfish, and it's like, oh, me, like, God, what about me? But the thing is, God is thinking about us. And I saw this meme the other day. I don't know if it was a meme or a GIF. I don't even know what they call it these days. It was some kind of image, a thing. And it was like, one, like, I think it was like one rose, and then like it said, my plan for my life. And then there were like a room full of roses, and it says, God's plan for my life. And I was like, oh my God, that's so accurate, because that's exactly how it is. But in this particular scenario, it was like, this is happening, but God, we have to remember that God is so perfect, and he's so concise and precise. God aims and he hits the target every time. He never misses. And one thing I learned in this, and I want to reference the scripture, it was in Exodus chapter 6, verse 1-5. This is when Moses was complaining to God. And God essentially gives him three reasons why he's doing this for the people of Israel. He said, one, because he had a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Two, because he had a covenant to bring them to the promised land, which is Canaan. And then three, because he heard their cry. So, and I'm thinking the people of Israel are probably thinking, well, he's coming because he heard our cry, because they didn't know about point A and point B. So again, God will strike and he'll aim at a target, but he has so many different so many different targets, but like he aims and he shoots and he scores every time. So God's plan, I feel like, is always trying to kill the most amount of birds with just one stone. And for us, it's like, oh, but God, you could have just done this and it would have worked. No, he has a grand master plan, and that's how he always works.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the point that you brought up, because reading through the book of Exodus, you see like so many of those proverbial birds that you were talking about, like getting hit. For instance, like Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and we know like Egypt, they have like their own set of gods and things that they worship. But God, and you even see Pharaoh, like when Moses first comes, he's like, I don't know this God. Like, I don't know you. I don't know this God. Like, who are you guys? And then God was like, all right, bet. Like, I'm going to show you who I am. I'm going to show you that I'm way bigger than the guys that you're serving here.
Yeah.
So he's doing that, showing Pharaoh, and we'll get to that in like the later episodes, where he shows Pharaoh exactly who he is. But in that same point, as he's doing that, he's also showing Moses, who also doesn't know God, who just met God like at the burning bush, also showing him who he is in that same very moment. And then also showing the people of Israel who he is. Because they're all getting to experience that as well, and seeing, the first instance of these miraculous things that he's doing to bring these people out. So yeah, a lot of birds being hit with that one stone where God is doing all of that.
Yeah,
So it's just crazy to see.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. And that's how God works. Like, so it's important for us to remember that he always has a master plan. And for us, it's only point A to point B, but for him, it's sometimes it's A, you got to go through E, you got to go
Mm-hmm.
through all these different things, but it's like, we'll get there.
Yeah,
But you got to trust me and you got to allow me to work through my process to get you to where you need to get to.
definitely. No, so there was one thing that really dawned on me in reading Exodus
Mm.
and kind of comparing it to today. It gets like really like super brainy, and I was kind of like blown away by it. But if we look at just the events that take place, where God says to Moses, "I will make you as a god to
Mm.
Pharaoh,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and then Aaron as my prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's there is a very strong understanding that the whole Exodus and bringing the Israelites out of Egypt was almost like a metaphor or a foreshadowing of the rapture
Mm-hmm.
and Christ coming back and bringing us out of the world to to be with Him.
Yeah.
I as I was reading this, I noticed like it even goes further than that,
Mm.
where so Pharaoh is, and this is my understanding, how I understand it. Pharaoh is the world,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a representation of the world as we know it today.
Mm-hmm.
And God is, or Moses is the representation of God,
Okay.
um, as he says in his word. And God is doing all these miraculous things. And as it keeps going, Pharaoh's heart gets harder and harder and harder.
Mm.
In today's world, we see the same thing happening where, God is still doing miraculous things and the
Yeah.
world is moving further and further away from the things of God until finally it gets to the point where God's like, all right, I'm getting my people out of here, sans the rapture,
Mm-hmm.
Christ coming back, getting his people out of there, and then Pharaoh is left holding the bag, or the world, the people who rejected God and allowed their hearts to be hardened towards God, is left holding the bag.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
and it goes even further where you see a lot of the same plagues that happen in Exodus, you see them again in Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Worse.
Yeah, very much worse. There's some repeats that come back, but yeah, they get worse in the book of Revelation. And I thought that was just so astounding to see how that played out and just see how the world is shaping out to be today. So I
Yeah.
just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's an awesome revelation. I think even just add into that, and I think that was in chapter 7, verse 1 going, when he talks about I'll make you a god before Pharaoh. I love the way God works. Like, God is so cool. Like, he's just so much swag. He's so cool. But I love how, like, God speaks to people in the terms they understand.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew, like, because if you look throughout the Bible, you're not going to see anywhere, again, I think there's the book of Psalms may say something about us being little gods, but besides that, when it comes to like a civilization, you don't see God referencing saying, hey, I'm going to make you a god before this person, or make you a god before King Nebuchadnezzar. Like, it wasn't anything like that in Babylon or like the Greeks or anything like that. But in Egypt, because Egyptians are so big on this whole God and goddess and
God
all
for
these,
everything.
for everything, they got a God for probably a God. Yeah, they got a God for
They got a
everything.
God for chicken, maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
But because of their culture and how they function, God said, I'm going to make you a God before Pharaoh. I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to use you to speak to Pharaoh in the terms that he understands. Culturally, it has to make sense. And that's why, like, I always say, when the Bible says that God, we should, vengeance is for him, you got to leave vengeance for God, because God will hit your enemies where it hurts them the most. So it's like, why do you want to exact vengeance on somebody who's done you wrong? Just commit them into prayer. Let the Lord handle it. Like, because he's going to hit them where it hurts the most. And that's kind of what he did here, where he said, I'm going to make you a God before Pharaoh. I'm going to show you that you are better than this guy. I'm going to show you that me as a God are better, or I'm better than whatever gods they have.
Puny gods. But no, thank you guys. We want to leave you with just this message that no matter what happens in your Christian walk, if it seems like things are getting worse and you feel like you're doing everything that you're supposed to do, you're fasting, you're praying, you're listening to the directive of God, even if things don't go how you think they should go, know that God has a plan, and
Amen.
he's going to continue to do what he needs to do. He has you in mind. He also has everything else in mind, and he has a master plan that just brings everything together. So if we stay in line with him, we know that we are a part of that plan. So we definitely want to leave you with that. Be encouraged, and thank you for joining us for this episode of Gaining the Edge. We hope that we were able to help you gain the edge in your Christian walk with God.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.